It's time to take your business to the next level, the boss level. These are the premier business owner strategies and successes being utilized by the industry's top talent today. Rock your business like a boss, a VO boss. Now let's welcome your host, Ann Ganguzza.
Hey everyone, welcome to the VO Boss Podcast. I'm your host, Ann Ganguzza, with the amazing special guest co-host, Ms. Pamela Muldoon. Hey Pamela.
Hey, Ann. Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing okay. You know, one day at a time, just like everybody else.
It is, yeah. It's 2020.
Yeah.
So
I think that says it all, Ann.
I have to say, so this past week, it's been frustrating. So I had a client this past week who I am on a contract basis with them. I've been doing some work for a while, and Pamela, I think you know me. I'm a little bit of an A type. So
Just a little bit.
Yeah. So if I submit a job, right, you know, it's the very best that I can do. And I'm pretty anal about that. So if somebody comes back to me and says, no, we need a pickup, or for whatever reason, if it's my mistake, of course, it annoys me. But if it comes back too many times, I'm like, I'm done already, right? I like to just do something, be creative, be awesome with it, and then submit it. And sometimes it's to my detriment if I have a client that comes back too many times. And I don't mind it if I feel like things are fairly compensated for my time. But
for sure, yeah.
I found out that in the fine print of this client, I was under an obligation to perform my retakes for free. And so I was kind of kicking myself and I was like, wow, that just does not do well for my time nor my business, really, because I'm spending the time doing pickups for free. And when I certainly I should have looked at the contract. And so now I am pretty much very close to releasing this client because
Bless
it's
and release
not
them, girl.
Yeah, I think I'm going to release, and I think that it speaks to, I'm sure that there will be another client that will fill the space. And I think it speaks to this kind of law that I don't know the name of it, Pam, but there's a law that I think,
one of my favorites.
Yes, that when I always tell people, let those clients go that are going to nickel and dime you, because it will give you the time to either get another great client or something will come into its place that will be better for you.
Yes. You have to release to let in, right?
Release to let in. Is there a name for that, Pamela?
There is, Ann, and it's one of my favorite universal laws, and it's called the law of vacuum.
The law of vacuum. Wow, I've never heard it termed that way, but okay.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
Yeah, it's a really, when you understand, there are certain universal laws that just when you understand them, you can use the power of this understanding to actually kind of move yourself from a personal development and also business development in a whole new direction. And law of vacuum is one of my favorites, and this is one of the many reasons why, because sometimes the world around us feels like it's controlling us. And so then we have to ask ourselves the question, how do we kind of take our control back, right?
Well,
like in
that
this
is
scenario, right?
so important in this time, especially, Pam, where I feel like we are a little out of control. I think, especially with me, A-type, wanting to always be in control, that's a little unsettling. So the more things I can put in my control, the better.
Absolutely. And so what I love about law of vacuum, which in a very basic description is basically that the universe abhors or loathes an empty space, right? And so just think about this like in your house, for example, or even perhaps your booth that was once an empty space, right?
That it was.
And then you started to intentionally fill it with your microphone or, you're like, I've got my monitor here and, I've got my interface and, I'm intentionally filling it. And so then I would encourage anyone listening, take a look at your booth and what else is in there that isn't intentional, right? It continues to fill up. You can think about this in terms of space. Well, the reaction of how you're feeling about your client, the law of vacuum works not only in terms of an actual space, but how we use our time and how we take on clients, for example. So, because you only have so much bandwidth as a human,
time,
correct?
Yeah, time is so
much
precious.
Yeah. And so if you can only do so much with your clients, then how are you filling that time and how are you filling your arsenal of clients, your list of clients?
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And is it congruent to who you are and your value system and your belief system. It's, one of my favorite people on my planet is one of my life coach friends. Her name is Lori Wondra, and she really reminded me years ago, it's not supposed to be hard. And it's a reminder.
Right?
Yeah.
So simple, but it's not supposed to be hard.
It's not supposed to be hard. And this client, it sounds like, was hard, right? And so you have a choice. You can continue and let this client stays on your roster, right? Think of your own roster. And you have to, you only have so much time, so you have to fill it. That client is taking some of that. Or, to your point, you can bless and release it.
Yes, that's what I do. Bless and release
refill
it.
Refill it. Yes.
Whenever I'm like, oh, I shouldn't be, but yes, Lisa, I should. And that's a great, great point, because I've always kind of felt, I never knew that it was called the law of the vacuum, but interesting that you say it like that, because now things start to fall into place for me. Because I've always, even in the way that I've designed my own business, and I think we've gone over this, where we're multiple passionpreneurs, right? So we want to fill our business and our day with things that bring us joy and things that, help us to grow. And so, like I've always said, I have those tendrils of my business. And I think that is an intentional fill of space. And even if I want to relate it to my shoes, Pam, okay, I'm going to relate it to I have cubby holes, right? I have cubby holes that I bought. I think it was IKEA or something. And there are only so many spaces, and one space fills a pair of shoes, right?
Yes.
And I have probably 70 cubby holes. And
okay.
So my husband makes fun of me. He's like,
there is no judgment on shoes here,
you
Ann.
have way too many shoes. And I say, well, look, I cannot buy any more cubby holes. I can only, I have to release a pair of shoes before I can buy a new pair. And that way it kind of controls my spending. So let's
when
say
you hit shoe number 68 or 69,
that's right.
You have a big decision ahead of you.
I do. And I've got one cubby hole left. So if I see a pair of shoes that I love, then I have to release another pair of shoes that no longer serves the purpose, right, for me. And I think that we can really see how I love how I just equated my business to shoes.
I am pretty proud of you, actually, because it totally is a relatable example, first of all. Yes, I understand your dilemma. And secondly, you're absolutely right. There is a finite amount of time or space, or you have to build more rooms in your house, right? Or you have to keep doing more, and that's not necessarily the answer.
That you're right. And now you just reminded me, rooms in your home, right? If how many of us, I'm sure, we're all of a sudden over a few years, we're like, oh my gosh, how did I accumulate all of this stuff? And when I moved, no more, it was no more apparent, right, that we had accumulated a bunch of stuff than when we had to move it. And then it was like, oh my goodness, how did we come up with all this stuff, and why are we keeping it? Because it's no longer serving a purpose. And I think that's an absolutely great way to look at your business as well, right? What is it that's taking up your time that is no longer serving a purpose to bring joy or grow your business?
Yeah. And the quality of client is very personal. I think that's a very personal decision, right? It's not for you or I to tell someone else who their quality of client is. Sometimes you have to go through some of these bad clients to know what a good client is. So there's
this is true.
a learning that can take place, right? I think the learning here was read the fine print. Right. But I think it's also a lesson in we actually have more control over what we want to accomplish if we really understand that powerful intention behind it, right? So,
agreed.
We're talking about a roster of clients, but this works, as we've kind of alluded to, in time. One of my favorite ways to bring law of vacuum into conversation is to look at your calendar. Again, a finite amount of space that needs to be filled. And even when you're not filling it, it's being filled. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess we can look at it in free time too, right?
Absolutely.
I try to binge watch sometimes, but my hours are so filled with other things that when I go to binge watch, I fall asleep. So my purpose kind of falls off there. But when I do have an intention to really get through a show, then I will put everything aside and make that priority. And then binge watch a show. But I think that it really comes down to making that decision as to what is it that's going to fill that time. So, Pam, I think what it really means is that even if it's like our business time or our personal time, if we fill it with intention with things that bring us joy or things that bring us growth, I mean, that's what I always strive for. And growth can mean being silent, right? Or taking time to be, silent and refresh your creativity.
Yes, yes. And, we've many of us have probably read these different categories, right? You've got your business, and then you've got your personal, financial, spiritual, all these different areas that you may want to consider prioritizing, right? Or setting goals or objectives around. And if you are doing that, so whether it's being physically active or physically fit, you have to, fill your vacuum of time to make sure that you're fulfilling that, right? And the same thing to your point with meditation or
Right.
quietness, taking a walk or just being. And I think especially in this particular year, that has a whole new credence of importance. Right?
Oh, so true.
Yeah. And I'm not a big fan of the word control because, there are things that are always out of your control. But
Exactly.
once you're aware and you can make some adjustments is when you hear the words, "Oh, I just don't have time," come out of your mouth a lot. My recommendation is to hear what you're saying. As soon as you cannot change till you're aware, right? So
Right.
be aware that
Exactly.
you said that, and then ask yourself, how am I using my time? What am I actually doing with my time? You know how you keep putting something on your to-do list and it keeps getting pushed out
Oh,
day
yeah.
after day after day?
Mm-hmm.
At some point, you've got to ask yourself, am I even supposed to do this task? Is this important? Is this still important to me? Right? Just because you wanted to fulfill something 3 months ago or 6 months ago, perhaps today it's no longer a priority for you.
That's so interesting. You know what? And I think I might be the queen of like having that to-do list. And the thing that stays on there the longest, I actually just this week started to look at that item that kept taking me the longest to do. And it wasn't that I didn't want to do it. It had to like shift priority because I had these other things to do that were going to keep maintaining my business.
Yep.
And so the thing that got pushed to the bottom is something that I didn't want to let go. It was something that I still wanted the control over it. However, I realized that if I wanted to be sane, because I am one person with a finite amount of time to dedicate to my business, I was going to have to outsource that particular task. And I actually took the steps to do that. But can I tell you, Pam, it took me, I'm going to say since the beginning of the year, right? To actually make the decision to outsource it and to just bite the bullet, find a person because I kept saying, I don't know anyone. I don't have time to look for somebody to help me with this. I don't know if that person, if it's possible to have a person to take this over. And I honestly I was going insane because I just couldn't get the task done. And I finally took the steps and started interviewing people. And I was able to hire a person to do these tasks that were causing me a lot of stress, actually.
Yeah. I think the word anxiety is what's creeped into my mind a little bit.
Absolutely.
You're probably feeling, and anxiety leads to guilt, right? Like you then start this sense of guilt that you're not fulfilling a task that you wanted to fulfill. It's this horrible self-guilt that a lot of us, I don't know, our little episodes are becoming little mini therapy sessions, just so you know, Anne. So, and not necessarily just for the audience, wink, wink. Because I really do believe that when the teacher is talking, she also needs to hear the lesson.
Oh, absolutely, right? And interestingly enough, what was causing me stress because I wanted control of it, right? As soon as I released it and released the control, I then regained my sense of calm about it and power, which is really, really interesting. And I know that it's so hard.
Yeah.
It's hard for a lot of people to let go, and especially in voiceover because we have to wear all of those hats. And so it becomes this thing where, well, who can I hire, right, that knows the industry, that can help me do the things I need to do in this industry that I'm not competing against, number one, right? I know that that's a worry for a lot of people. They're like, well, can I hire somebody in the industry and not have it affect my own business, right? To help me out, to help me market, to help me promote, whatever it is. And I think that's it's a big fear factor, right? Because they're unaware. Or if they hire somebody that's not from the industry, then, oh my goodness, they might have to train them. And that would take time that they didn't have. I know that all of that has gone through my own head when I've tried to determine, people to hire. And I'll just say this again. I mean, I literally have probably now I have 8 people that all do specific tasks for me, not full time, of course, but they all are very specialized in their tasks. And it really allows me to continue and to grow my business. And only then can I grow my business, because we are just one person. We do have only a certain amount of time. And if you have things that you want to do and you want to grow, I believe, at least I want to grow more, right? I want to grow bigger. I want to do more things. You have to shift, those empty spaces, right? Or shift the spaces, release, and then allow something else to come back in. And that would be growth.
Yes. And I think you make a really important point here that releasing doesn't always mean letting it go and never doing something with it, right? It can mean releasing it to someone else who's got the experience or is more who in their vacuum needs to be filled with a quality client, right?
Mm-hmm. Right, absolutely.
So you pay it forward in a sense. And I think, too, I don't want to miss this part of what you shared in you intentionally did the tasks to put that in place. So you filled your time with that task, but the filling of your time was to teach or train or get somebody else, up to speed to do that. And that, again, is still very much more of an intentional process,
right,
as opposed to letting time kind of take control of your calendar. And the last area I just want to touch on with this, because we've talked a little bit about this when we did our email marketing series, but we sometimes think that he or she who ends leaves this world with the biggest database wins. And that's not necessarily the case, right? That
good point.
When people unsubscribe to you or release themselves, that is okay, because now you've opened up the opportunity for someone of more quality to your business and perhaps your life to come in. And that is very much relevant in terms of building your database, which of course leads to your clients. And as you know, Anne, there's a lot of these, email service providers that have limits, right? You can only have 5,000 or 1,000 or 10,000 or whatever, right, before they start charging more money.
And thank you for the reminder, because I am at my limit with my email service provider right now. And they're like, come on, we need you to upgrade.
Yeah.
Wow.
And maybe it's not a matter of upgrade. Maybe it's a matter of is this database fully serving me?
Mm-hmm.
Your database is a vacuum, right? And now you can and when you look at it that way, it's not just about, I want to have 20,000 people on my list. I tell my clients all day long, I would rather have 1,000 qualified people on my list versus 10,000 who just want to, who are never going to serve in a way.
Right.
Yeah. It doesn't mean they still can't be your audience, right? But
right.
You're being very intentional about that process.
That's a great point. And I'm going to say the more focused and the more targeted your list is, the better. Like, yes. I agree with you. I'd rather have 1,000 members of my list that are focused buyers, maybe, or potential buyers, than 10,000 that just subscribed for, whatever, and don't read any of the emails that go out. So I completely agree with you there in terms of releasing your list. And so one of the best ways that you can help to do that for yourselves is to actually, as we went through our series of content marketing and talking about email service providers, is give your clients or whoever you're emailing the opportunity to release themselves from your your email if it no longer serves them. And that just allows more space for somebody that does, that will be a buyer. So
absolutely.
Good points.
I love it.
All right. Well, good stuff, Pamela.
It's always fun to chit-chat with you, Anne. We never always know where we're going to go, but I always like where we land.
That's right. And I feel like I've released some of that old energy that I was talking to you about in the very beginning, and I feel so much better about my business. I feel so much better about being able to release that. And I think you bosses will too. So take a look at your time and what is filling your time, and are you intentionally structuring that time so that it can offer you growth in any area of your life, and personal and business, creative growth, whatever it is that brings you joy. Big shout out to our sponsor, IPDTL, that allows us to grow and release and grow again into that vacuum.
Yes.
You can find out more at ipdtl.com. You guys have a great week, and we'll see you next week.
Bye now.
Bye.
Join us next week for another edition of VO Boss with your host, Ann Ganguzza. And take your business to the next level. Sign up for our mailing list at voboss.com and receive exclusive content, industry revolutionizing tips and strategies, and new ways to rock your business like a boss. Redistribution with permission, coast-to-coast connectivity via IPDTL.